There comes a time in your life where silence becomes betrayal. Not betrayal to others, but betrayal to your own soul. You sit in rooms where you're not respected. You nod to words that belittle your worth. You smile at those who drain your energy, and you begin to shrink. Not because you're weak, but because you've been taught to endure what should never be accepted. Let me tell you something. Tolerance is not love. Forgiveness does not mean allowing the same wound to be reopened. And being kind does not mean being a doormat. There is a line. And when people cross it again and again, you owe it to yourself to say enough. Because the moment you start tolerating what is unacceptable, you start training others to disrespect you. Your boundaries speak louder than your words. Your silence becomes permission. But your soul was never meant to be a prisoner to someone else's behavior. Today we draw the line in the sand. Today we expose the 7 behaviors that are unacceptable, toxic, and destructive to your peace, your progress, and your purpose. You don't need to shout, but you do need to walk away. Number 1, constant disrespect disguised as jokes, or just being honest. There is a kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't scream. It doesn't show up in broken bones or shattered windows. It hides in the laughter that feels like a punch in the gut. It hides in the quiet moments after someone says, "I was just joking," but something deep in your spirit knows. It wasn't funny. It was never meant to be. That was a jab wrapped in a smile. That was a knife dressed in humor. And the worst part, you smile back. Not because it was okay, but because you were trained to believe that keeping the peace means sacrificing your own. You were taught to laugh off disrespect, to shake it off, to not be too sensitive. But sensitivity is not a weakness. It's a sign that your soul is alive. You feel because you care, and you hurt because deep down, you know when someone has crossed a line. Constant disrespect dressed up as jokes, that is not humor, that is humiliation. And you are not obligated to tolerate it just to make someone else comfortable. The most dangerous kind of disrespect is the one that hides in plain sight. It's the kind that happens in front of a room full of people and nobody blinks. They laugh with the one who disrespected you. They nod, they play along, because in this world, cruelty is often mistaken for confidence. But it is not confidence, it's cowardice. It's someone using your silence as permission to belittle you. And when you sit there frozen, wondering if maybe you're just overreacting, let me be clear, you are not. Your spirit knows what your mind tries to explain away. And the truth is, anyone who makes you feel small and then hides behind the phrase, "just being honest," is not honest. They are cruel, they are careless, and they are counting on your kindness to protect them from consequences. But you owe it to yourself to stop protecting people who damage you and then demand your forgiveness like it's owed. You see, disrespect is not just about words. It's a pattern. It's a habit. It's the slow erosion of your dignity. They call it just teasing, but it chips away at your confidence. They say, "Don't take it so seriously," but it's your heart they're playing with. You're told to toughen up, but you were never meant to be numb. What they're really saying is, "Let me hurt you, and don't you dare call it out." And that's unacceptable. When someone repeatedly makes you the butt of the joke, when their humor always comes at your expense, that is not a relationship, it's a performance. One where your pain is the punchline. And let me tell you, any connection that thrives off your humiliation is a connection that needs to be cut. You were not born to be someone's target. You were born to walk in power with your head held high, not ducking from verbal bullets disguised as comedy. And don't let them fool you with charm. Some of the most disrespectful people wear the warmest smiles. They laugh loudest in the room, but their words cut deep. They hide their daggers in compliments that sound more like insults. They say things like, "You look good today, finally," or "You're actually smart for someone like you." That's not praise, that's poison. And what makes it worse is that everyone else thinks they're just being funny, but only you know the sting. Only you carry that weight home. And then, when you confront it, they flip the script. You're too emotional. Can't you take a joke? They make you the problem. That is manipulation. That is gaslighting. And that is a clear sign that this is not about miscommunication. It's about disrespect, plain and simple. And the longer you excuse it, the deeper it cuts. You have to start believing that you deserve better. Because the truth is, when someone repeatedly disrespects you and calls it humor or honesty, they are showing you exactly who they are, and more importantly, they're testing who you are. They're seeing how far they can push. They're watching to see if you'll laugh, stay quiet, brush it off. And every time you do, it teaches them one thing: I can keep doing this. Right? The moment you stop laughing, the moment you calmly say, that's not okay, the moment you remove yourself from the situation, you reclaim your power. You let the world know that your dignity is not up for debate. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to insult back. You just need to stand in truth. Because your silence may protect their ego, but your voice will protect your soul. I need you to understand this. People know when they're being disrespectful. They know. Don't believe the lie that they're just clueless. If they're intelligent enough to string together a sentence, they're intelligent enough to know when they've crossed the line. What they're really counting on is your forgiveness. They're betting on your empathy. And while empathy is beautiful, it should never be a cage. You are not required to absorb pain just because you understand where it's coming from. You can be kind and still walk away. You can be forgiving and still refuse to tolerate it again. Because when disrespect becomes a pattern and it's hidden behind excuses, what you're dealing with is not someone who needs patience. You're dealing with someone who needs to lose access to your presence. And let's talk about honesty for a second. Honesty is sacred. Honesty is truth without harm. It is meant to build, not break. So when someone tells you they're just being honest right after they've shattered your spirit, don't confuse that with integrity. That's brutality. Honesty without compassion is cruelty. And anyone who weaponizes truth to wound you does not value your growth. They value their dominance. Real honesty says, I care about you, and here's something you should know with love. But the kind of honesty that comes with a smirk, a sneer, a shrug, that's not truth. That's power play. And you have to stop letting them play you. You deserve truth wrapped in respect. You deserve conversations that heal, not comments that humiliate. Don't you ever let someone convince you that cruelty is a form of love. Some of you grew up in environments where love was disrespect, where affection came through insults, where approval was wrapped in sarcasm. And now you're struggling to recognize healthy love because toxic patterns feel familiar. But familiarity does not mean safety. And just because you've learned to tolerate it doesn't mean it's right. You have the right to relearn what love looks like. You have the right to say that may have been normal for my past, but it is no longer welcome in my future. Growth begins when you stop romanticizing pain. Healing begins when you stop accepting mistreatment as a form of affection. And freedom begins the moment you choose to walk away from anyone who makes light of your pain and then calls it fun. Let this be the moment you draw the line. Let this be the day you say, I will not smile through the insults anymore. I will not nod through the disrespect. I will not laugh at what breaks me just to make others comfortable. You owe no one your silence. You owe no one your suffering. You were born with value, with worth, with dignity. And anyone who makes you question that, joking or not, does not deserve front row access to your life. You are not overreacting. You are awakening. And from this moment on, anyone who disguises disrespect as honesty, anyone who wraps cruelty in laughter, they no longer get to write their names in the chapters of your story. Number 2, manipulation, when love becomes a tool of control. There's a certain kind of pain that doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't come with fists. It doesn't slam doors or scream in your face. No, manipulation comes dressed in sweetness. It comes wrapped in I love yous, and I'm only doing this because I care. It's the slow burn, the quiet storm, the kind of control that wears the mask of love while tying invisible strings around your heart. You don't even know you're being pulled at first. You just feel tired. You feel unsure. You feel like you owe someone something every time you say no. And then one day you realize you haven't been making your own decisions for a while now. They've been made for you. Gently, quietly, constantly. This isn't love. This is possession wearing perfume. And love should never make you feel like a prisoner in your own life. They don't always take your voice away by force. No, sometimes they just speak over it so often that you forget what it sounds like. They ask you to change slowly. I don't like when you wear that. Why do you need to hang out with them again? That dream, it's not realistic, and it sounds small. It sounds harmless. But over time, those tiny seeds grow into a cage. Suddenly, you're not dressing for yourself. You're not speaking your mind. You're walking on eggshells in your own home. You've traded freedom for peace, but it's not real peace. It's quiet control. And they've mastered the art of disguising manipulation as care. They'll say, I'm just trying to protect you. But what they're really doing is isolating you. And love that isolates isn't love. It's a leash. It starts off soft. That's how they get in. Manipulators aren't always loud and aggressive. Sometimes they're gentle, attentive, and so good at reading you that you don't even notice they're rewriting you. They study your wounds. They memorize your doubts. And then they use those weaknesses as leverage. If you've ever heard no one else would love you like I do, or you're lucky I put up with you, understand this. That is not love. That is fear wearing affection's mask. It's emotional blackmail. It's someone twisting your insecurities into a contract. And slowly you stop believing you can survive without them. That's what they want. Because real power isn't in force. It's in convincing someone to hand over their strength willingly. And that's what manipulation does. It makes you question your own worth until the only validation you crave is the one that's holding you hostage. They don't always tell you not to grow. They just convince you that growth means leaving them behind. They say you've changed, like it's a crime. Like becoming stronger, wiser, bolder is somehow a betrayal. And that's how you know it's manipulation, because real love celebrates your evolution. Real love says, go higher, I'll meet you there. But manipulation, it chains you to a version of yourself that they can control. And the moment you start rising, they start panicking. They throw guilt like daggers. You don't have time for me anymore. You're different now. Yes, you are. And that's not a bad thing. That's what healing looks like. But manipulators don't want healed versions of you. They want dependent versions. Versions that question everything. Versions that ask for permission instead of making decisions. That is not love. That is power disguised as intimacy. You may feel like you're crazy sometimes. That's the hardest part. Because manipulators twist reality. They make you question your memory, your intentions, your emotions. You say something hurts you and they say that never happened. You cry and they say you're just scared. No, you're not scared. You're waking up. You're finally seeing that love should never make you feel confused about your own truth. If you find yourself constantly apologizing just to keep peace, constantly shrinking so they feel big, constantly second guessing your every move, that's not love. That's mental warfare. And you don't win that kind of war by arguing. You win by walking away, by saying, I will no longer negotiate my worth. And here's the truth they don't want you to hear. Love is not about ownership. Love is not about control. Love is not about fear. Love sets free. It doesn't cage. Love empowers. It doesn't enslave. And the person who truly loves you will never make you choose between your freedom and their affection. They will never use guilt as currency. They will never punish you with silence, with withdrawal, with distance. They will not love you conditionally, only when you obey. You should never have to lose yourself to keep someone. And if you do, then what you're keeping isn't love. It's manipulation wrapped in false promises. Sometimes the hardest chains to break are the ones you don't see. Emotional control doesn't leave bruises on your skin, it leaves them on your soul. And when someone says all the right things but makes you feel all the wrong things, believe your feelings. Love should feel safe, not suffocating. And if they keep you close just to control your steps, that's not love, it's a strategy. If they only support your dreams when it doesn't threaten their ego, that's not love, it's insecurity. If they only say I'm proud of you when you're being who they want you to be, that's not love, it's possession. And you were not born to be someone's emotional puppet. You have the right to take your life back. You have the right to say love should never hurt like this. You have the right to choose peace over pressure. You are not crazy for wanting clarity. You are not selfish for wanting space. And you are not weak for walking away from someone who says, I love you with their mouth and I own you with their actions. No one, no matter how close, how charming, how convincing, has the right to control your path. You were made for more, for love that lifts, for relationships that breathe, for partnerships that don't require chains. Let them call you cold. Let them say you changed. Let them throw guilt your way. But don't you dare go back to shrinking, to doubting, to second guessing your worth. Walk on, heal forward, and trust. Real love doesn't manipulate, it liberates. Number 3, emotional neglect, when your needs are always an afterthought. There is a loneliness that hits differently. It's not being alone in a room. It's being unseen in the presence of someone who claims to love you. It's reaching out emotionally and realizing no one's reaching back. It's crying in silence because the one person who should notice never does. Emotional neglect is quiet but cruel. It doesn't show up in arguments or bruises. It shows up in cold silences and forgotten birthdays, in the way your pain is treated like an inconvenience. And the worst part, you begin to believe you're asking for too much when all you really wanted was to feel like you matter, to feel like someone is actually there, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, soulfully. Love should never feel like you're alone in a crowded room. At first, you make excuses for them. They're tired. They've got a lot going on. Maybe I am being too sensitive. You convince yourself that your emotional needs are a burden. You lower the bar. You stop asking. You stop expressing. You shrink. And one day you look in the mirror and realize you've become someone who's afraid to need anything. You've traded emotional connection for surface level peace. And that peace isn't real. It's the silence of someone who's slowly forgetting how to feel. You stop bringing things up because they never listened. You stop dreaming aloud because they never cared. And now every part of you that once wanted to be heard is slowly dying inside. That's emotional neglect. And it is not love. They don't yell. They don't criticize. They just don't show up. They don't notice when your energy shifts. They don't ask how you're really doing. They're there, but they're not present. And presence without attention is abandonment in disguise. You could be breaking and they'd still be talking about their day, never noticing the cracks in your voice. That's how emotional neglect works. It makes you invisible. It teaches you to smile when you're sad, to nod when you want to scream, to pretend you're fine just to avoid being disappointed again. Because nothing hurts quite like needing someone who doesn't seem to need you at all. That kind of love erodes the soul. Love is supposed to be an exchange, not a sacrifice. But emotional neglect makes you feel like the only one giving. You're the one remembering the little things. You're the one asking questions. You're the one checking in, showing up, trying harder. And in return, silence, distance, indifference. It's not the fights that break your heart. It's the emptiness, the void, the way they can watch you pull away emotionally and not even flinch, the way you can cry next to them and they don't even ask why. That's when you know your emotional well-being isn't a priority to them. And that is a dangerous place to stay in. Because the longer you stay, the more you forget what it felt like to be cared for. And here's the harsh truth. Emotional neglect doesn't always look malicious. It can come from people who are broken themselves, people who never learned how to love beyond themselves. But their past doesn't excuse your pain. Their trauma is not your prison, and your needs are not too much. You deserve love that listens, love that notices, love that doesn't make you beg for attention like a child. You deserve connection, not just cohabitation. Someone who doesn't just share space with you, but shares their soul with you. Because love without emotional intimacy is just proximity. And proximity without care feels like punishment. It slowly breaks the spirit. You were not created to carry emotional silence. You were not designed to pour and never receive. You were meant for someone who sees your heart and says, I want to understand you, not why are you so needy? Real love leans in. And it doesn't look away when things get heavy. It doesn't brush past your pain with, you're being dramatic. Emotional neglect says, I'm here, but not for that part of you. Love says, all of you is welcome. And when someone constantly chooses to ignore your soul, they are slowly killing your spirit. One unanswered question, one overlooked moment, one unspoken dismissal at a time. You can't build a strong connection on emotional starvation. You can't build trust with someone who only hears you when it's convenient. You can't thrive in a relationship where your sadness is silenced and your joy is ignored. That's not love. That's emotional exile. And you do not have to stay there. You do not have to apologize for needing affection, communication, understanding. Those aren't weaknesses. Those are the foundations of healthy relationships. You deserve someone who doesn't just tolerate your emotions, but cherishes them. Someone who doesn't just hear your voice, but listens to your heart. You were made for more than being an afterthought. And maybe the scariest part is that emotional neglect can make you forget how to connect with others, with yourself. You become so used to suppressing your needs that even when real love shows up, you don't know how to receive it. But you can unlearn that silence. You can heal that hurt. You can rebuild the parts of you that were ignored for too long. Start by listening to your own voice again. Speak your truth. Demand emotional presence. And if they can't give it to you, walk away, not because you're bitter, but because you're no longer starving for scraps of love. You've remembered your worth. And the first act of healing is refusing to be invisible any longer. Number 4, gaslighting. When they make you question your own reality. There's a kind of pain that doesn't bruise the skin but shatters the soul. It's the pain of doubting yourself, of not trusting your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own reality. That's what gaslighting does. It slowly chips away at your confidence until you no longer know what's real. One minute you're sure of what you saw, what you heard, what you felt. The next they're telling you that you're overreacting, that you're too emotional. And at first you question them, but then you start questioning yourselves. That's how the manipulation begins, not with a shout, but with a whisper. You're imagining things. It seems harmless in the beginning. A denial here, a joke there. I never said that. You're being too sensitive. You always twist things. You brush it off because they say it with a smile or follow it with, I love you. But over time, the lines begin to blur. You stop speaking up because you start believing your feelings are flawed. You stop trusting your gut because they always have an explanation. Slowly, you begin to think maybe you are the problem. That's the poison of gaslighting. It doesn't just confuse you, it rewrites your truth. It makes you doubt your sanity, your strength, and eventually your identity. Gaslighting isn't just manipulation, it's warfare on your reality. It's when someone rewrites history in front of you and dares you to argue with them. It's when you recall every word, every moment, but they look at you with dead certainty and say that never happened. It's when your truth is constantly invalidated until you stop fighting for it. They twist the facts so masterfully that you start apologizing for things you never did. You start begging for forgiveness just to keep the peace. You start hiding your emotions because every expression gets turned into an accusation. And eventually, you don't recognize yourself anymore. Not because you've changed, but because they've made you question every part of who you are. You try to stand your ground. You try to explain, to reason, to show evidence. But nothing works. They're always 2 steps ahead, flipping the script, deflecting the blame, twisting your words. And when they finally see you breaking, they act like they're the victim. Why are you attacking me, they say. And just like that, you're the one saying sorry again. Gaslighting turns the truth into a maze. You walk in with confidence and leave with confusion. And worst of all, they do it so calmly, so cleverly, so consistently, that eventually your inner voice, the one that used to scream for justice, starts to whisper in fear. Hey, you know something's wrong, but you can't quite explain it. You feel hurt, but can't prove why. You feel crazy, but only around them. That's how you know it's gaslighting. It's not just the lies they tell, it's the way they make you stop trusting the truth you know. It's when you second guess everything you feel because they've taught you to question your own mind. It's emotional manipulation dressed in charm. It's psychological abuse wrapped in words like love and concern. And over time, the strongest part of you, the one that used to fight for yourself, goes silent. Not because you've given up, but because you're exhausted. Confirmation bias. Gaslighting is strategic. It isolates you. It makes you afraid to talk to friends because they might confirm your reality, and the gaslighter can't have that. So they turn people against you. They plant seeds of doubt. They say things like, you know how emotional she gets, or he's always misinterpreting things. And slowly your support system crumbles. You're left alone, spinning in circles inside a cage made of lies. That isolation becomes their power. Because if you're the only one experiencing it and everyone else thinks they're charming, kind, or rational, then who will believe you? That's how they win. Not with violence, with control, with confusion, with invisibility. But here's the truth they never want you to find. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not too sensitive. You are a human being with feelings, with intuition, with memory. And no one has the right to rewrite your reality. No one has the right to make you feel guilty for expressing pain. If someone truly loves you, they won't use your heart as a weapon. They won't deny your truth to protect their image. Real love takes responsibility. Real love acknowledges mistakes. Real love listens. Gaslighting isn't love, it's manipulation. It's about power, not partnership. Control, not connection. And you deserve more than that. Healing from gaslighting starts the moment you reclaim your truth. The moment you say, I remember what I felt, and that matters. The moment you stop looking to them for validation and start trusting your inner voice again. And yes, it's hard. Because gaslighting doesn't just damage your trust in others, it damages your trust in yourself. But you can rebuild it slowly, gently, with people who honor your voice, with safe spaces where your feelings aren't questioned, they're embraced. You begin to heal when you realize your emotions were never the enemy. They were the signal, the warning, the truth trying to break through the fog of manipulation. Let this be a reminder. Your reality is sacred. Your truth is not up for debate. The way you experience something is valid. If someone loves you, they will never use your vulnerability against you. They will never make you doubt your worth just to feel more powerful. You are not difficult. You were dismissed. You are not unstable, you were undermined. You are not broken, you were being broken down. But now you rise. You reclaim your clarity. You trust your instincts. You learn to speak again, louder this time. And if someone ever tries to dim your truth again, you will recognize it. You will walk away. Because now you know what it is. And now you know who you are. Number 5, passive aggression. When they hurt you indirectly and hide behind sarcasm or silence. There's a kind of silence that doesn't bring peace, it brings pressure. A kind of smile that isn't warm, it's sharp. That's passive aggression. It's subtle, but it's powerful. It's not a scream across the room, it's a cold shoulder at the dinner table. It's not a slap to the face, it's a sarcastic comment that slices through your confidence and makes you question your worth. It's disguised cruelty. It's when someone doesn't want to look like the bad guy, but still wants to punish you. And they do it with silence, with snide remarks, with withholding affection, with backhanded compliments that feel more like insults dressed in politeness. You can feel the tension in the room, but when you ask what's wrong, they say nothing. You know something is off, but they insist everything's fine. Only to throw little jabs when you least expect them. Must be nice not to care. You're always so emotional. Sure, go ahead and do whatever you want. Those aren't just words, they're weapons. Designed to wound without drawing blood. Designed to make you feel guilty, confused, and small. It's not direct, it's indirect warfare. And what makes it so toxic is that it leaves no clear proof. Just the aching feeling that something inside you is being slowly poisoned. Passive aggression is cowardice wrapped in charm. It's someone trying to hurt you without taking responsibility for it. They don't want to look confrontational, but they want control. So they manipulate with their tone, with their expressions, with what they choose not to say. And that silence is louder than words. It tells you, I'm punishing you without ever having to say it. It's emotional blackmail. They never seem to care and they flip it on you. Why are you overreacting? I didn't mean it like that. You're reading too much into it. Suddenly, you're the one defending yourself, even though you were the one hurt. And make no mistake, this behavior chips away at you. It doesn't destroy you in one blow. It erodes you, moment by moment. You start to second guess yourself. You start to walk on eggshells. You change how you speak, how you move, how you show up. Just to avoid triggering another sarcastic remark or long punishing silence, you try harder to please them, to be more agreeable, to keep the peace. But peace built on suppression isn't peace at all. It's self-abandonment. And over time, that quiet toxicity becomes your new normal. You forget what it feels like to be emotionally safe. They might never raise their voice. They might never say something outright cruel, but their messages are loud and clear. Withholding affection, that's a punishment. Sarcasm instead of sincerity, that's a jab. Forgetting to include you, that's a power play. They'll call it teasing, they'll call it humor, they'll call it being honest, but deep down, you know it's not love. Love doesn't play games. Love doesn't punish with silence. Love doesn't stab with sweet words. Real love communicates clearly. Real love says, I'm upset, let's talk about it. Real love doesn't make you decode pain disguised as politeness. When you're constantly dealing with passive aggression, you lose your sense of safety. You're constantly anticipating the next cold stare, the next cutting joke, the next emotional withdrawal. And the most dangerous part, you start to normalize it. You start to think maybe this is just how people are, but it's not. You don't have to live in a space where you feel like you're always one wrong move away from emotional punishment. You don't have to keep explaining your pain to someone who keeps acting like it doesn't exist. You don't have to stay in relationships where the love is conditional, the affection is weaponized, and the communication is manipulative. Healing from passive aggression begins with awareness. Recognizing that love shouldn't hurt in hidden ways. That affection shouldn't come with strings. That sarcasm isn't always harmless. You begin to reclaim your power when you stop accepting subtle abuse just because it's quiet. You start to heal when you say, I deserve to be spoken to with respect, not with mockery. When you stop excusing behavior just because it's not as loud or obvious as anger. Pain is still pain, whether it's shouted or whispered. And you are allowed to say, this isn't okay. I will not shrink myself to fit inside someone else's emotional immaturity. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. And when you stop tolerating passive aggression, you make room for honest communication, for direct conversations, for emotional maturity. You make space for the kind of love that doesn't punish you for being human, that doesn't hide behind silence or sarcasm, that speaks openly, that listens sincerely, that doesn't confuse you but comforts you. You deserve relationships where you don't have to wonder what someone meant, where you don't have to analyze every word, every pause, every look. You deserve to be loved in a way that is loud in kindness, not quiet in cruelty. So if someone is using silence as a weapon, speak up. If someone is cutting you with sarcasm, call it out. If someone is emotionally punishing you, walk away. Because the longer you stay, the more you lose your voice. And your voice matters. Your feelings matter. Your truth matters. You don't have to keep trying to read between the lines when you were meant to write your own. You don't have to keep surviving emotional landmines. You were made for peace, for clarity, for love that heals, not love that harms. Passive aggression is not love. And the moment you stop tolerating it, you step into a life that is louder with honesty and richer with real connection. Number 6, jealousy and sabotage. When they secretly root for your failure. It's a quiet pain. Realizing that someone you love, someone you trust, someone you let close to your soul, doesn't actually want to see you win. They smile when you succeed, but it's tight. It's forced. You can feel the sting of envy behind their congratulations. And even though their words sound supportive, their energy tells a different story. Deep down, they're not clapping for you. They're calculating, watching, waiting, hoping for the moment you stumble so they can finally feel taller while you fall. That's not love. That's not friendship. That's sabotage wrapped in sweetness. That's jealousy hiding behind a mask of loyalty. Sometimes the people you think are in your corner are the same ones pulling strings to hold you back. They'll never say it out loud. They'll never admit it, but their actions speak the truth. They plant seeds of doubt. They minimize your wins. They say things like, don't get ahead of yourself, or it's probably just luck. Every time you level up, they find a way to pull you down with criticism dressed as concern. You start to notice the pattern. They show up less when you're thriving. They distance themselves when you shine. Because your growth threatens the parts of them that stayed small. Sabotage doesn't always come in the form of dramatic betrayal. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, hidden in the little things, a forgotten invitation, a subtle insult in front of others, withholding information that could help you, cheering you onto your face, but privately hoping for your failure. It's that sick contradiction. People who are close enough to celebrate you, but too bitter to do it sincerely. And what makes it even more painful is that you once believed they were for you. You shared your dreams with them. You trusted them with your hopes. You thought they were safe, but they weren't. There's nothing more dangerous than a jealous heart that hides behind a friendly face. That's the kind of energy that will drain your spirit slowly. It will chip away at your confidence because you'll start questioning yourself. You'll wonder, am I imagining this? You'll try harder to please them, to prove you're still humble, still likable, but no amount of shrinking will ever make a jealous person love you better. Their issue isn't your pride, it's your presence, your light, your rise. They don't hate what you've done. They hate that it wasn't them who did it first. And that's a wound they refuse to heal. When someone roots for your failure, it reveals more about their brokenness than your worth. Insecure people often resent secure ones. Scarcity-minded people can't celebrate abundance. And so instead of being inspired by your growth, they feel threatened by it. Instead of learning from you, they compete with you. It becomes a game of silent sabotage, where they pretend to support you, but secretly hope life humbles you. They want to see you struggle because it makes them feel better about staying the same. Because if you rise too far, they're forced to confront their own lack of movement. And that's a mirror they don't want to look into. True love, true friendship is not competitive. It's not transactional. It doesn't feel threatened by your evolution. Real ones want to see you win, even when they're still waiting on their breakthrough. They don't secretly hope you fall so they can feel better in comparison. They don't whisper doubts into your dreams. They don't gossip about your blessings. They stand beside you, not behind you, with a dagger in their hand. When someone truly supports you, their energy is consistent. They don't disappear when you're celebrated. They amplify you. They clap the loudest, and they mean it. Jealousy has no room in real love. If someone in your life gets quiet every time you succeed, start paying attention. If they suddenly change when you achieve something, don't ignore it. You deserve to be surrounded by people who are inspired by your light, not blinded by it. You deserve friends who won't flinch at your growth, who don't downplay your dreams, who don't secretly hope your plans fail so they can say, I told you so. You deserve a tribe that believes in you without bitterness, who pray for your elevation, who protect your name when you're not in the room, who don't compete but celebrate with you. It's not your job to dim your light to keep others comfortable. It's not your responsibility to hide your blessings so jealous hearts feel secure. Your growth is not arrogance. Your blessings are not bragging. You don't owe anyone an apology for doing the work, making the climb, and reaping the reward. The right people will see your shine and feel inspired, not insecure. And if someone in your life can't handle your success without secretly hoping for your failure, it's time to reevaluate their place in your story. You don't need that kind of poison near your purpose. Protect your dreams. Be discerning with who you share your vision with. Not everyone who listens deserves access to your heart. Not everyone who smiles in your face is for you. Energy never lies. And if someone's presence makes you feel smaller every time you rise, believe it. Your future requires people who speak life into you, who water your growth, who challenge you to become better, not bitter. You are not responsible for healing someone else's jealousy, but you are responsible for guarding your peace, for protecting your path, for making sure that every relationship in your life lifts you, not limits you. Number 7, blame shifting, when nothing is ever their fault and everything is always yours. There's a deep, soul-crushing exhaustion that comes from always being made to feel like the villain in someone else's story. When every disagreement, every mistake, every hardship somehow turns into your fault, when nothing is ever their responsibility, it leaves you questioning your own sanity. That's the dark power of blame shifting. It's not just unfair, it's emotionally violent. It's the constant rewriting of reality, where they play the role of the innocent and you're always the problem. And the most painful part, you begin to believe it. You start carrying burdens that don't belong to you, apologizing for things you never did, shrinking to avoid conflict. Blame shifters are experts in deflection. No matter what happens, no matter how clear the facts are, they twist the story. If they lie, it's because you made them feel unsafe. If they betray you, it's because you weren't giving them enough attention. If they hurt you, it's somehow your fault for being too sensitive, too emotional, too reactive. There's always a reason why they're never to blame, and it always leads back to you. Over time, it poisons your self-worth. You become so entangled in guilt and confusion that you forget where they end and you begin. What makes blame shifting so dangerous is its subtlety. It doesn't always come through yelling or insults. Sometimes it shows up in quiet accusations, in guilt tripping, in emotional withdrawal that forces you to chase, to explain, to fix what you never broke. You find yourself walking on eggshells, careful with every word, every action, because you know that somehow, some way, this too will be flipped on you. It becomes a cycle. You argue, you try to reason, but by the end, you're the one apologizing again. You wonder, maybe I am the problem. That's not love. That's not growth. That's manipulation. They don't want resolution. They want control. And control is most effective when it wears the mask of victimhood. Blame shifters are rarely direct aggressors. They prefer to play the wounded. They thrive in environments where they can claim moral superiority, where they can point fingers while pretending their hands are clean. And the longer you stay entangled with them, the more you lose your voice. You become the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who holds all the emotional weight. You keep hoping they'll take responsibility, that they'll see what they're doing, but they won't. Because this behavior isn't accidental. It's survival to them. It's how they stay in control. Every time you excuse their behavior, you reinforce the pattern. Every time you take the blame just to keep the peace, you give them more power to keep twisting the truth. And eventually your mind becomes a battlefield. You second guess your instincts. You stop trusting your perception. You silence your pain to maintain harmony. But real love doesn't demand your silence. Real love doesn't force you to carry what was never yours. And anyone who refuses to own their mistakes, who always makes you the problem, is not building with you, they're breaking you. Healing starts when you stop carrying what isn't yours. When you recognize that love without accountability is just manipulation in disguise. You were never meant to bear the weight of someone else's immaturity. You are not responsible for their inability to self-reflect. You're allowed to say, this is not mine to hold. You're allowed to walk away from conversations that leave you feeling small and confused. You're allowed to stop explaining yourself to people who've already made up their mind to misunderstand you. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's reclaiming your power. You deserve relationships where both people own their flaws, where apologies aren't demanded but offered freely, where accountability is mutual, not weaponized. You deserve to be seen, not just blamed. You deserve someone who can say, I was wrong, without turning it into a lecture about what you did to provoke them. You deserve someone emotionally mature enough to stand in their truth without needing to tear you down to protect their ego. Growth cannot happen without honesty, and honesty cannot survive in a space where blame is the default language. Blame shifters fear accountability because it exposes their fragility. Taking ownership threatens their image. But your peace can no longer be the cost of their comfort. You are not here to be a scapegoat for someone else's emotional immaturity. You are not responsible for managing another person's inability to evolve. Set the boundary, call the pattern, name the behavior. And if they refuse to change, let them go. Because the truth is, no matter how much you bend, how much you love, how much you give, someone who refuses to look in the mirror will always find a way to blame the reflection. You are not the villain in every story. You are not the cause of every problem. And the moment you stop internalizing their projections is the moment you begin to heal. You are worthy of healthy, accountable love, of peace, of truth. And anyone who tries to convince you otherwise doesn't deserve a front row seat in your life. Release what was never yours to carry. Forgive yourself for not knowing sooner and rise. Because your story doesn't end with blame, it begins with the power to walk away. As we reflect on the unacceptable behaviors that should never be tolerated, it's essential to recognize the emotional and psychological toll they take on our lives. Disrespect, manipulation, emotional neglect, gaslighting, jealousy, sabotage, and blame shifting are not mere traits or temporary mistakes. They are toxic forces that undermine your self-worth, distort your reality, and hold you back from becoming the best version of yourself. Each of these behaviors can leave scars that last far longer than we realize, affecting our confidence, our peace, and even our ability to trust others. The heart of the matter lies in understanding that you are not responsible for the behavior of others. You cannot control how people treat you, but you can control how you respond, how you set boundaries, and how you protect your mental and emotional space. The hardest lesson in life is recognizing that the people who truly care about you will not manipulate, disrespect, or sabotage your growth. Instead, they will nurture, support, and lift you up, celebrating your wins and encouraging you through your struggles. The most important thing you can do is to recognize when someone is operating from a place of selfishness, insecurity, or emotional immaturity. It's up to you to decide whether or not you will allow them to continue to have space in your life. Don't be afraid to stand firm in your own truth, even if that means walking away from people you thought you could count on. Remember, your peace and happiness should never be a compromise. No one has the right to strip you of your dignity or manipulate you into questioning your worth. You deserve relationships that are built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. You deserve people who see you, hear you, and validate you. Those who want to see you succeed, not fail. Those who celebrate your growth instead of resenting it. You deserve love that is free of conditions, free of manipulation, and free of hidden agendas. It's time to stop tolerating the behaviors that weigh you down. It's time to stop allowing people who don't care about your well-being to have control over your life. You are not obligated to stay in toxic situations just because they've been a part of your life for a long time. You owe it to yourself to step into your power and demand the respect and love you deserve. I hope you take this message to heart. Stand strong in who you are and never settle for anything less than the best you can give yourself. Life is too short to be surrounded by people who drain your energy, who diminish your spirit, or who aim to bring you down. Choose peace. Choose growth. Choose self-love. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to set boundaries, reclaim your worth, and live your life with purpose and joy. God bless you all.